Hello, welcome to Insight, everyone. I'm Nnamdi Odipo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori. Thank you for joining us.
As we count down to the 63rd anniversary of Nigeria's independence, I feel inclined towards a conversation on the country's unity and collective ownership, as well as the correlation between citizenship and nationalism. Again, what is the thing about ignoring contractual agreement, sometimes even the seemingly simple provisions stipulated as terms and conditions in common online purchases that we often do, and the daily subscriptions that we make? We'll be talking about that, and then, of course, the consequences. Elizabeth is here and also standing by as well. Elizabeth?
Well, of course, no country can actually thrive without peace. And as nations strengthen conversations around peace building, we decided to examine factors hampering peace developments in Nigeria and Africa, as well as the way forward.
Very well then, let's begin with our first conversation. Sections 14, subsection 2B of the 1999 Constitution declares that the security and welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of government. Yet, when you put that in the context of nation building, do leaders primarily build nations, or are nations built by the citizens? Well, around the world, some nations are known for their high level of citizen participation in public governance, otherwise known as patriotism. And so it is within that context that such nations are known as nations of citizens. Let's talk some more about this with my guest, Eko Ejimbi Eko, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Welcome to Insight.
Thank you.
Let's create a basis for our discussion on this issue by dissecting citizenship and obligations. I know it is guaranteed by the Constitution that one can only be a citizen of Nigeria by faith, by marriage, or naturalization. So that is not the issue. The issue, and that is my question to you, is whether by virtue of the provisions of sections 24B and C, which of course talks about citizens' obligations, the citizens or citizenry, do they have a greater responsibility than the leadership in the task of nation building? Is it, in your opinion, who has what and who has more?
Well, in my humble view, if you speak to the obligations of citizens, pari passu the duty of the leadership in building a nation, it's a give and take thing. You don't expect the leaders to take the sole responsibility of developing a nation. The citizens have to play their own part. There are obligations that are meant for citizens to perform, while other obligations are that of the state. Yes, it is considered security, welfare, that of the state. The little duties and obligations that behoves on the citizens, how have we performed it? Have we been paying our tax obligations? Have we been meeting each and every liability that a citizen of a nation has to do in order to show patriotism? People throw about the word patriotism as if it's just a title, but I think it's something that is more encompassing. As a citizen of a state,
Indeed.
just like as you're a member of a household, how have you done your own bit to better the household that you come from? Nigeria, generally, we are more quick to criticize than to assist in the building of the nation. I hold that as a very minority view, so to say. But I think the ball must start from us. It must start from us.
Indeed, because what we're often prone to, or what we often see, is people saying, there's this mentality of we against them. The people on the one side, and then government on the one side, on the other hand. And then the people pushing all of the balls towards the leader, or the leadership, political leadership that is, not mindful that they have even a greater responsibility, and that's, in my opinion, to the task of nation building.
Yeah, I think we cannot shy away from our own basic responsibilities. A leader can only lead very well if the followers are ready to also follow very well. It's as simple as that. A leader is a representation of those that he leads. We as a people, how have we performed our own duties? Go round, even go to how we live. How have we been a good neighbor? Security is local. Have we looked out for the welfare of our neighbors? Are we bothered if all is going well with our neighbor or not? We cast so much aspersion as to the lack of leadership, so to speak, forgetting that these leaders are picked from us.
Exactly.
We vote them into power. They are a representation of who we are. So
there's
if we
also
say
a
that the
saying that
leadership is bad, then
Yes.
we also have to do some sober reflection as to how are we as a people.
it's quite a popular saying, as in when they say that people deserve the kind of leadership that they get, because of course the leadership emerges from the people themselves. SAN.
Yes, well, I agree. I think there is an old quotation that says, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. In Nigeria, it works in the reverse. Everybody sits and expects the leadership to perform miracles. You as a citizen, have you done your bit?
You know?
If you go to even cleanliness around our households, how many times have we come out before, if we are not mandated to come and clean our environments? There's incessant frauds because they're draining and the drainages are blocked. Who blocks them? Is it the leadership? We speak of insecurity.
Yes.
Who are these bandits? Who are these thieves? Who are these dishonest people? They are members of the society like me and you. So I think a lot needs to be done to reorient ourselves as to our duties as citizens and to be a little bit more patriotic.
You know, when we talk about this whole issue of nation building, government and citizens and role and all that, isn't it easy to assume, or maybe I should say, would it be a fallacy to ask citizens to just trust government, especially in the evolution and perhaps development and implementation of policies and public programs? Or would it be more rational to say that government has to keep working to gain public trust, because of course it has to be earned in the first place?
Yes, to that extent I concede. Trust must be earned. But the duty of leadership, pari passu governance, it's an interactive thing. The people must do their bit, while the leaders must also do their bit. You talk of policy implementation. How do you implement this policy? Look at traffic violations. How many Nigerians without penalties or without a force being attributed for failure thereof will obey simple traffic instructions? We see this every day. We as a people need to sit down and ask ourselves the kind of country that we want. And I think it should start from the most basic units, the households, the churches, the mosques, our social clubs. I think our value system has dropped. Yes, the leaders must earn our trust, but we should also assist them in making leadership slightly easier. It's a Herculean task. I don't envy any leader in present-day Nigeria. I do not.
You know, in my opening, I referenced a couple of nations. Maybe I didn't mention them, but of course they are out there. Nations referenced as nations of citizens, and that is because there's this. It's not physical. It's not. I mean, it's a sense of nationalism, not native nationalism like we do have here, and that's an issue that I want to talk about here. You know, and I don't want to get started on politics and the dangers constantly posed by the divisive rhetorics of politicians. Well, and all of that, but you and I would agree, we saw what played out during the last elections season, during the campaigns and you know, and all of that during the elections. Many analysts continue to say that ethnic, sometimes religious induced pattern of campaigning and even voting is at the center of Nigeria's political immaturity, or the political immaturity in Nigeria, and that it further exacerbates division in the country. I'll ask you again, are we going to drop this solely on the feet of political leaders, ignoring the fact that those used to often push these narratives, negative narratives, are citizens like you and I, and that the citizenry bear a huge bulk of responsibility for the division that we experience and the tension as well in the land?
Well, the socio-cultural realities of Nigeria cannot be wished away. The average Nigerian first thinks of himself as a tribal man, as somebody from a particular village, from a particular local government.
Is that perhaps why they refer to us in some quarters as a nation of tribesmen?
I think I want to agree, not completely, but to a large extent. If you ask the typical Nigerian man on the streets, where are you from? He's not from Nigeria. He's first an Igbo man from his clan, from his local government, before he comes from his state, before they start thinking of Nigeria as a whole.
That goes for other Nigerians from other tribes.
Go to the north, it's the same thing. Ask the man from Zamfara, he will tell you that. Ask the guy from Niger Delta, it's the same thing. Ask the man from Oyo.
So that is a massive problem.
And the social...
And it's at the center of what we're discussing here.
Like I said, it's an orientation thing. We need to change our mindset. We need to first sit down and agree that a good person is a good person regardless of the language he speaks, of the tribe that he comes from, or of where he had the misfortune of being born. We do not pick where we are born. But in Nigeria, we are limited to that. If I was born in Lagos, I'm sure I'll be a Yoruba man. If I was born in Kaduna, I'll be a Kaduna man. But regardless of the accidents of our birth, we need to first think about the nation in the front row of our prioritization, not to first think of ourselves from that place you come from. If you go to the local governments, if they speak more than one languages, there's that division. If you go to the villages, if there are two dialects, there's the same division. It's a socio-cultural reality. So
it's not just limited to politics alone.
No, the politics keys into your interest. The views you hold as a person determines the kind of politics you play. You can't divorce one from the other. Cannot. We can wish it away, we can pray it away, we can hope it goes away, we can speak it away as we try to do. We come here, give beautiful speeches, we'll do symposiums and workshops, and we assume that the man in the marketplace in Boko or the man in the marketplace in Otukpo understands us. It's not true. Reorientation must start from the grassroots.
You talk about reorientation. I mean, we've had, I don't know, we've had agencies of government, as in, or public agencies in charge of that for some time, for decades now. But like you did say, this is something that has to start from the smallest social unit, which is the family, like you've identified. But then let me take you back again to this, your inference to the fact that we lack, or rather there is an absence of a rallying identity and a national cause in Nigeria. Usually, you know, when the matter of patriotism is on the table, that is even when it is more apparent. Do you think there is one single or maybe a couple of elements that can become a national rallying point or identity? Maybe can it be shared language? I mean, what can possibly be that one key ingredient that makes unity, that makes citizen participation and makes collective ownership of Nigeria a common denominator?
The only times that Nigerians are united.
Don't tell me it's during football match.
During football. When Yakuba Egbeni scores, they forget that he's a Yoruba man.
that cannot be the only rallying.
Nobody wants to ask where he comes from.
That cannot be the only rallying point.
The only time that we are completely Nigerians first. In my limited view.
But in our evolution, and SN, I mean, and this is quite serious. I mean, we may be laughing about it at this point, because it cannot be only when Nigeria is playing football that you see the oneness, you see the unity amongst Nigerians. It should be much more than that. There should be that, you know, maybe I should say invisible and visible, you know, tangible ingredients that puts us together, something we collectively believe in. A Nigeria that you and I believe and take ownership of. I mean, what's that? I mean, is this something you can speak to? I mean, if it's just soccer bringing us together, that means we're in for the long haul. There's a massive problem ahead.
You see the challenge here. Me and you may speak from our enlightened views, because we've had the benefits of attending one or two institutions where somebody has ingrained in us the need to be more patriotic. They need to know what are the duties of a citizen, his obligations, vis-a-vis that of the leadership. They need to do more for the country, as it were. But the man on the streets who does not have the privilege of our education How does he get that? That is the question we should ask ourselves. How do you get across to that farmer? Because if you convince the farmer, he convinces his children, they convince their neighbors. It's a grassroots thing. You cannot start at the top and expect it to trickle down. Maybe at the more basic elements that may work. But if you are speaking of orientation and patriotism, I think it's something you build up. I stand to be guided anyway. Look, the belief the person has that if I travel from here to another state, no matter how late it is, if I knock on the door of someone and I explain myself and my scenario, I'll be taken in and welcomed without my tribe being an issue, without my religion being an issue. It's something that cuts far beyond speeches and the gesticulations we are doing. You spoke to agencies that are age-long. Do they still exist? If they do, when was the last time you saw their impact on the streets? Look, we have a national anthem and a pledge. Go to the streets, stop 10 people, and ask them to repeat the national anthem. You'll be amazed. It's a gradual erosion. Our values have somehow washed away. They need to be patriotic. The people no longer see it, or for some reasons, they attempt to put it on the back burner. Till the man believes that I am doing more, not just for myself, but for my neighbor. A neighbor assists a neighbor and assists a neighbor. That's how this thing spread. But the individualistic and tribal and religious sentiments that we hold seems to be stronger than the nation building.
Your thoughts on this matter tends to lean more towards building something bottoms up rather than the top bottom approach. Many people would say that, and this is when it goes back to leadership now, and they say leaders must lead by example, and then the citizenry draws from the example of leadership. I mean, but you are saying that first, the followership has to recognize the obligations and burden of followership, and has to understand that, look, you can only build a nation from the bottom than to the top, because after all, leadership comes from amongst the people there at the bottom. Does that align with your thoughts so far?
Yeah, to a large extent, I'll concede that the leaders play a very strong role.
Yes.
When you speak to leadership, it's not just political leaders that need to assist in nation building. There are religious leaders that hold a very, very large influence. There are traditional rulers that hold a very, very large influence. Till these people come to the table, till they are invited and allowed to participate in this nation building, till they stop treating them as outsiders or only come to speak when you are invited, till there's a collective effort of leadership by whatever name you describe it, whether it's in the church, whether it's in the mosque, whether it's traditional, till all these people sit down and we agree that our nation is dying, we need to do more, and they are asked to bring in their 2 pennies. They will suggest things that maybe we did not even realize. We underrate them to a large degree, and I think they hold a large percentage of the sentiments that you find in the grassroots. They can mold these sentiments, but have they been given the opportunity to mold the sentiments? Have they themselves been reached out to? Have we even first identified this as a challenge rather than just a talking point? It's something that must move beyond the lectures we speak. It must, an active reason must be given. We must realize this is a problem. We must realize this is a challenge. Admitting is a problem. It's already a step towards solving it, but have we admitted it? We don't seem to.
I hear you, and I hear you loud. We're rounding off our conversation on this issue, but just before we do that, I would like to ask you a key question. This is against the backdrop of Nigeria's 63rd independence anniversary and the clamor and call for our continued unity. I'd like your thoughts on the argument that a Nigeria carved up along regions and maybe sectional contours will probably be a more united and prosperous nation. What do you think?
I do not agree. When you balkanize a nation, you end it. It's like saying that because I cannot untie this knot, let me chop it up. How will it help? I don't think Nigeria is together by mistake. I think we were destined to be together. I think our greatness is entwined amongst ourselves. Everybody has a role to play. I think we overlook and underrate some parts of the nation in this context and discussion, and that is what keys into these issues we have. If I feel I come from an ethnic orientation where I'm not being allowed to say much, or where people look at me for some reason as a second-class citizen, I will not contribute to the growth of the nation. I think everybody should be welcomed. Everybody should be given a place. Let everybody's views be honored. Let us be allowed to say what we need to say without first being identified according to the language we speak. And the nation will start moving forward. As I sit here, if I don't tell you where I come from, I'm sure you probably will not know that.
You know?
But I'm here saying my opinion because you feel I'm qualified to say it. That should go down and cut across every tenet of our society.
Very true. Very true. At this point, I'd like to allow my guests a break for a couple of seconds, and when we return, we'll move on to our other topic of discussion on why certain persons still do not realize the danger or dangers of not reading or understanding contractual agreements before signing or agreeing to them. I'm fascinated with the discourse on national monuments and assets and how much is being done to preserve and
Look into the language issue. We have turned English to become like a pride value in our own cultural values.
National cash transfer is not a COVID-19.
Invasion 1897 was a deliberate
you know, many of these people coming to the urban areas now.
These and applications, there are terms and conditions that
of course it is the union of two people, a man and a woman coming together.
My name is Nnamdi Odipo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori.
I'll begin this segment with a poser. When was the last time you checked or read the updated terms and conditions for perhaps a rolling subscription, maybe on your phone? It's often amazing, you know, outrightly alarming to say the least, at the number of people or persons who ignore contractual agreements for seemingly simple purchases or utility payments. The danger is most times ignoring these simple terms and conditions could have serious, very serious consequences. My guest is still here with me, Eko Ejimbi Eko, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, and we will be pursuing, we will be getting his thoughts on this new issue on the table. SAN, thank you for staying with us. I wonder if it will surprise you to know that more than two-thirds of people, Nigerians, and people around the world, that is roughly around, if I were using Nigeria, that would be around 68% of Nigerians. They either don't read or don't understand contracts that they sign for subscriptions or utility. As a matter of fact, there were some researches that I did before we came on there, and which showed that in most cases, people barely read contracts to an extent, but even when they do, they don't understand what they are agreeing to. How deeply negative and worrisome is that, considering that the consequences could be as little as paying a fine to as high as serving a jail term, considering what type or what terms of the contracts have been breached?
Well, I think I'll start with the age-old saying that people perish for lack of knowledge, so to say. You are getting into a relationship with somebody. This relationship is bound by laws, by rules and consequences. A contract is drawn up that you are supposed to consent to. Then you consent without even understanding what you are agreeing to waive or agreeing to do. And you expect that once the consequences come, they should take a sentimental view rather than a legal view over these issues. And it's a bit worrisome. I agree that most of these terms and conditions are contained in what they call the fine prints or the fine lines. Yes. But then again, take a more than passive view before you click I agree, before you sign that document. may it be rental, may it be purchase receipt, may it be purchase of some software or something as negligible as maybe a replacement token for something. You need to know, even if it's banking, this bank account that I'm going to, the bank has given me forms to fill and to sign. I don't bother reading them. I was told to go through them. I did not bother because I felt there were much. I signed them. Tomorrow a problem comes and the consequences arises from what I agreed to do. I expect it not to attack to me. It is not possible. It's not right. There are lawyers there. Speaking for Nigeria more, we seem to value lawyers more in the breach than to avoid the consequences. That is what we do. We think lawyers exist only for when you have problem, not to help you avoid the problem.
Isn't that part of the bane of our development? As in, we would rather be reactive than proactive.
That is Nigeria. We pray more than do more.
You know, for clarity, I mean, for clarity, your point is that parties who accept or sign a document that appear on its face to be a contract are deemed by law to have agreed to all of its terms. Is there any exception at all to the general rule? I mean, maybe in the event of, say, is it possible to just say this? And I mean, you're the expert there. Can I go to court and tell a judge that, yes, I actually saw this agreement, but it was too long. I could not read it. And I was in the middle of something. I was quite busy. I just took a cursory look and signed because it was kind of the second party or third party were in a hurry, and so I signed. Would that stand in? Can that be a case of general exception? Can that be a case of exception to the general rule? Or how about in the event of fraud? What happens in such a situation? Use these two scenarios and draw the distinction so we just our viewer gets an idea.
Well, for the criminal aspect of things, ignorance of the law is not a defense. Let me put that out there. But when we now speak to the civil aspects, our day-to-day collaborations and interactions with each other, commercially or otherwise, the Latin maxim volenti non fit injuria comes in. What I volunteer to do, can I complain of the injury that arises therefrom? You were told to go through this thing. You felt you were in a hurry. You felt you trusted the other party. You chose not to go through it. You signed it either way, without knowing what signing will imply. Now that it has gone awry, you've come with your head in your hands and you expect that the judge should have sympathy on you. Maybe in one or two scenarios, exceptions can come in. Equity can be asked to come into play. Take, for instance, the person that signed the contract is an illiterate. He therefore could not understand the terms of what he was asked to sign.
Exactly.
That may be an exception. It is arguable and will depend from case to case. But for the scenario where you're a lettered man, the contract is in a language that you ought to understand. You choose not to go through it, and your excuse is that you were in a hurry or you trusted the other party. I don't think that will assist you.
And SN, I mean, and this happens all the time, and I would not remove myself from this. You know, sometimes I want to update an application on my phone. Perhaps, I mean, an application I've had for some years, maybe, and there are usually updated terms and conditions attached to these apps. And you just go to the app, and then the next thing you scroll down, it's very lengthy. They are filled and full of legal jargons. And then I just go to agree, and I click on I agree. I mean, this is not because now I cannot read. Of course I can. It's written in English, even with the plenty legalese and legal jargons there and all of that. But because it's too lengthy, and people often get the notion, or people often get the idea that they are all the same. These agreements are all the same. But, you know, within these terms and conditions are certain provisions that could, in fact, they could tuck in somewhere in the middle there that you're selling your birthright. This has happened. Have you had cases like that? Have you actually addressed or resolved cases like that in the past?
Yeah. For starters, the people that decided to warn you that you should go through the conditions before you proceed, I'm not sure they were being overly careful or out of nothing to doness, or they were just being a little bit technical. There's a reason why. The law that regulates this thing insists that you must first be told the consequences of your acceptance. That same law also demands that you must consent to it before he does A, B, C, D. That is why you see that lengthy breakdown. You ought to go through it before you consent.
No matter how long it is.
Well, that is a view. You ought to go through it. You know, there is this saying, the devil is in the details. The devil is usually in those details.
True.
You chose to ignore it. Now you complain that he has come here.
So in essence, the point is, no matter how long or lengthy these tags C and A's are, no matter how filled with legal jargons they are, you must have to go through them. What are the options that you have, basically?
Get a lawyer.
I'll pay a lawyer.
You call them jargons. When the consequences come, you realize that.
Okay, so let's use the proper word now. Legal terminologies.
Okay.
Legal terminologies that the average citizen may not easily have an understanding of. And maybe such a person does not have ready and easy access to a legal practitioner or a legal representative. What then happens?
Well, if
like you yourself painted a scenario, you gave an example of someone who is not so lettered, and you said that could be. I could very well just say, look, yes, I may be schooled, but not so much that I understood what was being said in these terms and conditions.
The facts of this matter will determine how the court will look at it. The first question is, what language was the rules, the terms and conditions written in? Was it in English language? Do you understand English language? Can you read and write? If you can understand English language and can read and write, and you are now alleging that terms and conditions, you could not understand it, the court may take a very hesitant view in that regard. So you say you have no access to lawyers, or you have no access to...
maybe the person does not have one readily available at that point.
They were not telling you to sign at that point. You chose to sign at that point.
So you can choose to delay.
It's the consequences of your action. You see, the thing is, you first need to develop the habit of paying for intellectual property.
Okay.
The tools of a lawyer are his intellectual property. Most often than not, you expect him to do it for free. And maybe because you have realized he will not do it for free, or he may not give you the kind of research you want for free, is why you chose not to contact him before you went ahead. You calculated the cost and you felt it was cheaper to proceed. Now, consequences have come. And
they are now more expensive.
You have now found that it was cheaper to have approached that lawyer.
We may not be paying for your services here, but we would need for you to help us with a few things, just so people have a better understanding of some of these issues. Just some legal terms and clauses contained in agreements or in contractual agreements. What does it mean? And this is the first one. What does it mean when they say that when an agreement or a contractual agreement is an entire agreement? What does that mean? An entire agreement?
Well, I struggle to understand where you are.
Okay, so I'll give you an example. Like, I go through some agreements and they are not so clear because not everything is spelled out in the agreement. Some are implied. So that's when they say some contracts are implied, or they're implied and yet there are express terms of agreement. So when an agreement has implied provisions and then it is expressly stated, there are express terms in the agreement, are they not two variants? Is it possible for an agreement, for instance, to have, it was implied in this agreement that you should have done this, even though it was not expressly stated? Is that like a loophole? Can I perhaps, can it be an exception when I say, oh, no, it wasn't expressly stated in this agreement that I should do this, even though the second or third party could say, no, it was implied that, look, you should do this as a provision of this contract.
Well, when you say an express term, it's a term that is clearly stated out there, that you should look at this and you should behave in this particular way, in this particular manner, at this particular point. When you say it's implied, it is expected of your doing A to do B. For instance, you took a tenancy agreement. The express terms were contained in your tenancy contract. It is for residential purposes only. You should keep the house in the same state that you got it in. You should pay your rental value or as at when due. Those were expressed. Then it is implied that in the course of your using a house for residential purposes, you will not be running a nightclub in the basement.
Even though it wasn't expressly
It may
stated.
not have, it has been told to you that it's for residential purposes. It does not mean that you will go and carve out portions of it and use for non-residential purposes.
So
it
in
may
the
not have been
event,
told to you.
in the event that a legal matter arises based on that, can I perhaps now argue to the fact that, look, it wasn't expressly stated, even though it was implied? And that was my original question to you.
Okay. Let me paint a scenario.
Please do.
You put a child in school.
Yes.
The terms of acceptance of the child were told to you in an agreement you signed with the school. You are supposed to pay his school fees or her school fees as at when due. You are supposed to pay and bring out the sums for books and other form of logistics associated with his education. It is implied that you should bring that child to school. It is implied that that child should be in school as at when due, which is usually 7:30, 8 a.m. in the morning. It is implied that this child will be given assignments. You as a parent ought to help with that. The school may not come out and outrightly tell you that when we give your child a homework, you're expected to participate in the doing of the homework at home. It's not a so radical line, as some people say. It's what you do in the normal course of events. That is usually what is implied.
So, SAN, I mean, this is in rounding off our conversation on this issue. Essentially, what do I need to know before clicking I agree on that, terms of service agreement? If I have the patience to read the lengthy piece and do not get bogged down by the legal terminologies, let's not say jargons.
Most of these agreements you speak to, they are usually written in simplified English. What are my obligations as a buyer of this application? What are the obligations of the software developer that I'm buying the application from? What does he intend to do with my identity, and what is he supposed to provide me with? What should I expect from this product, and what I should not expect from this product? When you go through those agreements, it tells you your do's and your don'ts. It tells you the duties that are yours, the duties of that of the other party. It is when you have seen those duties, rights, and obligations, if you are comfortable with them, you agree to it. If you are not comfortable with them, you refuse to give your consent. And that ends the matter.
It's as simple as that.
Very simple.
So there's another issue, and this is, it's not totally removed from what we've discussed so far. I don't know how grounded you are in the Nigerian music industry, but I'm sure you would have heard of the unfortunate demise, death, or incidents involving late Afrobeat artist Mohbad, and the underlying matter, which underlying matter of breach of contracts, as well as the surrounding issues of intimidation and harassment that followed. But my point is more on the prevalence of breach of contractual terms within the industry, and how that continues to negatively impact the industry and the country at large. It does look like arbitration, which originally should be a fine tool to manage and resolve disputes within this industry, is not as effective. Or, you reckon that there is more to the industry than meets the eyes? Why is arbitration seemingly failing in this industry?
Well, first things first. What are the terms of the contract for which you signed? If it's let's say, music record label contract that you signed, what were your duties you were supposed to perform under that contract? Have you performed them? Did you foremostly understand your obligations under that contract before you signed? Did that contract even provide for an arbitration clause that you are quick to mention? If these things are not there, how do you lean towards them? If the contract that you signed did not make room or provision for arbitration, how then do you arbitrate it? If, let's say, the contract you signed asks you to have produced 10 LBs or albums within a particular number of years, did you perform your terms of the contract? I'm sure some of those contracts will have termination clauses. If you no longer intend to be bound by the terms of this contract, there should be some A, B, C, D, E stated in there for you to do. It still boils down for the need of using professionals to do a professional job. I want to get into a technical contract. I want to get into a technical agreement. I must be at home with the terms. I should have a lawyer. If this document may be 150 pages, I should have somebody who is specialized in going through these documents to understanding them, guide me on whether or not I should give my consent. But when I do not do this, and I go ahead and sign a contract that is beginning to look as if it's presently oppressive, you have an issue. But if the contract was not in violation of any known law, and the terms were within the boundaries of normal practice, and you consented to it, you ought to be bound by them.
Yet again, you have succeeded in establishing, the need for proper legal representation in the events that you don't have one, an understanding of the language in which a message or terms and conditions are couched. I mean, you might need to seek legal representation. And yet again, you have also established the importance and the importance of the work that legal representations and representatives like yourself do on a daily, for our national development and continued existence, as it were. I'd like to thank you so much, Eko,
Thank you very much.
Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Thank you so much for your insights on both issues that we've talked about today. They've been quite insightful, and you're quite vast. I'd like to thank you so much indeed.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Elizabeth Thomoru is up next.
Peace building aims to resolve injustice in non-violent ways and to transform structural conditions that generate deadly conflicts. Peace building can include conflict prevention, management, resolution, and post-reconciliation. It revolves around developing constructive personal, group, and political relationships across ethnic, religious, class, national, and racial boundaries. Strategic peace building advocates insist are activities that address the causes of violence, create a societal expectation, harmony, and stabilize society politically and economically. How can we resolve conflicts within Nigeria and Africa, knowing the economic benefits of peace? My guest, Gabriel Aduko, Chairman, Arewa Consultative Forum, will speak to us. Sir, thank you so much for joining us on Insights.
Thank you very much for allowing me to join this great debate of the World Peace Day that just passed and marked the 21st of September every year. Thank you.
All right, sir, let's begin with internal conflicts. Why do we experience so much of them?
It's quite unfortunate that the word peace has not been taken seriously as it ought to be from the beginning. From the concept of United Nations itself, I think it began with the idea of peace after those World War experiences, because we know that the world will not get on if there's no intervention. And there appears to be something working until really they came to light with it, and by 1981 they really brought it forward, the issue of peace internationally, globally, and there it was passed. And by 2001, very practically, they took a resolution in the assembly to designate a day worldwide that violence should cease fire all over, and that's why that remarkable day is important for all nations. But recently you can see what's happening in our system all over the world. See what happened. Russia just started bombarding
Ukraine.
This thing almost without notice. At this day and age of the country, when we are struggling to eradicate violence all over the places in our own small. Coming back to Nigeria, you can see what's happening in our societies today. Very embarrassing all over, particularly since I would say even after the war, our civil war, it was not as bad until the politics of the country began to build up with taking power by force, and methods of violence started showing up in Nigeria. But know that peace. Me being a Christian, it is clear in the Bible that my peace I leave with you, and that is the crave for any class of Christians. My peace I leave with you. That is what the Lord said. And therefore, it is important that we do all we can to harmonize ourselves in every group that we are. That should not be an interference in the peace that we require for development.
All right, sir, if we are to consider the recurring coup d'etat in Africa from Sudan to Burkina Faso, Niger, and the latest Gabon, what are we not doing as a race to bring about peace?
Well, yes. It's been series of actions and series of cries to leaders of these countries to know that, violence does not subscribe to progress at all. And United Nations has put it that sustainable development, they put a program on that all nations that signed up there should struggle to get there. I personally have tried in my own little way to look at the little word, called Ayingba, which is a place, the word is almost, I think, almost bigger than Gambia, that is a country. Let's talk of, and so many nations that are small like that, But the violence that exists in is caused largely by the current drive, or the drive for power, and power that is taken by leadership that are also not capable of harnessing the resources of humans and everything that is with us and cause for development. So conflicts come up, and there we are with the problem. So there must be a change if we want to move forward in Nigeria. Must be a major change in our attitude towards the country. We should know that, yes, priority is the development of our country, which is so rich in everything, and we do grow in population, and without caring that, yes, this population has to be cared for. We allow little conflicts to blow into enemies, to blow into attitudes that are not compatible with development.
How do we surmount these challenges, knowing that we are one, we are together, we are indivisible?
Yes. The thing is, there are peculiarities in both the northern end, the peculiarities of differences in tribe, and the peculiarities of the degree that religion is taking, and other peculiarities about what are the economic things that go on. Yes, fortunately, no, there is that unique northern environment that used to be relatively peaceful for businesses and things to grow, but now, because of the slowdown and loss of those productive things, bandits have come up and become a nuisance in the whole area. Look at that. It's become something a little embarrassing, I will put it. That in places like Guzau, that was a booming city, down up there, you now go in fear to those areas. No, I won't mention all, but there you are. Today is shaking all over. We need to come back to terms with what it was and begin to do things ourselves, making the best of what God has made available to us. Under the earth, there are so many things there. We have not exploited it yet. So reduce ourselves to manageable levels and give respect to those who will be in command, those who can discipline people who go out of the way. That is the traditional rulers that are in places have authority to do. Today, the Nigerian situation, our constitution and the way of governance has stripped them of that kind of power. You know, what we have to do is to work for peace at the grassroots level by engaging them economically in all that is available for them. The center can take care of other external forces that might be disturbing this country. So we need a debate around ourselves to ensure that this great country stays on, and the North, the South must cooperate to establish a peace system that will not drive our children mad, because one, they are afraid of their own future. What will it become?
At what point would you say religion failed in promoting peace? Why do we have issues tolerating each other?
Religion, yes. We cannot ignore the crisis that happens in religious beliefs. But the same religion, in the two main ones that we know, that is the Christian religion and the Islamic religion, all believe in peace. And if we all believe in peace, what comes around with peace, we must contain it. And the discipline that goes with it to ensure that it is possible. I had the debate which happened on the other day. They were excellently supported. I won't have the time now but in a nutshell, you know, both religions have harmony, what they call harmony within themselves, and harmony between what we call major religions, and recognizing the nature's provision for each and individuals. We must make sure that no one is really hurt because you belong to our religion, but we are together in harmony. We must develop a harmonious way of developing our community together, no matter which religion that is there. You know, we should play down on differences in our religion. It is key. It is key to our moving forward. I do agree with you.
Gabriel Aduko, Chairman, Arewa Consultative Forum. Sir, we want to thank you so much for your time on Insight. We do appreciate your presence. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that's it on this episode of the program. To join us same time next week for more on Insights. My name is Nnamdi Ojipo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.